What is the dumbest thing you believed as a child? Write in the comments what you think about it. What did you believe in as a child? Enjoy the show. Story 1. My mom told me that if you go by a nickname long enough, it becomes your legal name. My dad told me he was banned from Disney World because he shot Mickey Mouse in the ear. I think he told us this because he didn't want us to know we were too poor to be able to go. Story 2. Also, you know how when you see the bowling lanes to your side and the pins look like they are set up differently due to your angle of observation? Well, I thought that they were in fact set up differently, and that those were the lanes for advanced bowlers. Story 3. My stepdad had an old truck with 2 gas tanks that he would flip a switch to change from one to the other. He had us convinced that he would magically steal gas from other vehicles. He would tell us to pick one, and we would watch the gas dial go from E to F while driving on the highway. Blew my mind. Story 4. I didn't know what getting change at a store really was. I thought every time you bought something, the store would pay you money back, and that's how people didn't run out of money. So when I was told to make change in 2nd grade math class, I was really confused. Like it was a big complex equation to determine how much money the store would pay you for buying something. It never entered my head that this was just a simple subtraction problem. Story 5, that watermelon seeds would grow in my stomach if I ate them. Also that a fat holly jolly man would break into my house at Christmas time, eat my cookies, drink my milk, and leave presents. Sad to grow up and realize that the only time a fat man or anyone else breaks into your house is to rob you. Story 6. Not me. But my dad convinced my brother, and later my nephew, that the reason our blue heeler slept on his back was because he was from Australia and was used to being upside down. I teach high school and managed to get one of my sophomores with it too. Poor kid looked so confused. He was pretty sure that couldn't be right, but I said to with such a straight face. Kids will believe a lot of things if it comes from their teacher, LOL. Story 7. When I was pretty young, probably about 5 years old, I met the Black Power Ranger and got a picture of him signed. In the picture, you could see that he was missing his middle finger, and my mom told me it was because he had flipped his mom off, so she cut it off. I believed it until I was about 20 years old when my mom told me she had lied about it and didn't actually know what happened. Growing up, I told so many people this guy's mom cut his finger off. Story 8. I believed that sexual intercourse and sex were 2 different things. Sex was when you wanted to have fun and there was no risk of having babies. Sexual intercourse was all serious, and you had to wear suits, and then you'd be granted a baby. You can blame the Bible I read as a child because it was always, and he had intercourse with her. Then, a few chapters or verses later, she gave birth. Story 9. My family has never watched Survivor. Not for any specific reason, they just haven't, so I had never seen in. One day there was a commercial for it. I was 4 or 5. I remember thinking, for a few years, that people on that show were actually dying, and that must have been why we didn't watch it. Became a Hunger Games fan when I grew up. Maybe it started there, LOL. Story 10. There's a ride at Disneyland called Space Mountain, and the word space in the name convinced 4-year-old me that it was a trip to space. I held my breath the whole time because I wasn't allowed to stay off the ride. My dad's a very be brave and man up person, and I'm glad he is. It's just funny looking back. Story 11. Oh gosh. So when I was younger, I was on a fresh new website called YouTube and didn't understand people did edit videos and fake trailers from other movies. So I saw one about a sequel to Titanic and got excited because I had just seen the movie and I'm like, ooh, this looks cool. Major cringe at that thought. So I showed it to my brother. He was 22, I was 10/11ths, and he busted out laughing over how I thought it was real, only for him to explain the Titanic movie was based on a real-life event, and the trailer had clips from other movies with Leo Lowell. To this day, he still brings it up. Story 12. That my dad bought our dog at the grocery store. Like, one day he left home and Mom told us he was going grocery shopping. When he returned home, he carried our new dog in his arms. I put 2 plus 2 together and concluded that he just found him at like 7-Elevens and couldn't resist bringing him home. You know, like you do with a bag of chips and such. Story 13. I was at that age where I thought I knew what sex was, kind of, but also didn't fully know the names of everything. I'm male, and some older boys asked if I knew how to make a baby. I said yes, and of course they pressed me to prove it and tell them how. My answer was, you rub penises together. I got made fun of for years. This was in the early 80s and not in a gay-accepting era. Story 14. I believed, when I was 4, that if I pressed down on a certain freckle on my arm, nobody could see me. I would press it and hold as I walked around believing I was invisible. My mother noticed and asked me what I was doing. I told her it was my invisible freckle, and when I press it, no one can see me. She went along for a while and then became annoyed, making me stop pretending. As an adult, many years later, every once in a while, I press the freckle. Not because I believe I'm invisible in that moment, but because I wish I could be. Story 15. In Jurassic Park, when the visitors leave their RVs and walk into the field with the sick Triceratops, it cuts to a scene with Dennis initiating things on his computer. He types in something or hits enter, pushes a button, etc. And right after that, it immediately cuts back to the visitors and you hear a loud thunderclap. In my child mind, I thought Dennis was controlling the weather within Jurassic Park and began the thunderstorm himself. Whenever I watch that scene, I flash back to my 5-year-old self, LOL. Story 16, I have a lot. That trophy's cost $1 million. No idea where I got the idea. Wasn't a relative trolling me, I don't think. That going over 85, the top end of the speedometer of my parents' and grandparents' cars, was the same as going 1,000,000 miles per hour. Maybe I liked the number million. That my friend had 2 houses. His road was a horseshoe that ended on my street in 2 spots. So obviously going 2 different ways meant 2 houses. This did not apply to my own house and its road that, while not also a horseshoe, obviously ended on 2 different roads, both of which we used. That my computer game that said play again soon would be sad if I didn't play again soon. Story 17. My dear mom told me that the Statue of Liberty was a gift from France to the US, which the French put into the ocean, and she then magically floated to where she now stands. That story was so heartwarming to me as a child that I continued to believe it until happily reciting it to my future hubby when I was 21 years old, and he explained the truth of the matter to me. LOL! I am so naive, LOL. Story 18. In Aurora, Colorado, there is Buckley Space Force Base. On base are 4 large white structures that look like golf balls. I asked my dad when I was 7 what was in them, as I knew he used to be in the Air National Guard there. I was told they were filled with snakes. They actually house satellite equipment and are a key link in NORAD, the detection network for North American airspace, and would be part of detecting nuclear ICBMs. So if the nukes ever fly, Denver is likely toast within an hour. Story 19. One time in preschool we went on a field trip to the bus station. Maybe it was a Greyhound? I don't know, but I remember briefly sitting in a motor coach-style bus with my class. I remember we all thought the bus was going to Disneyland, and we got so excited. Then when we were told, no, it wasn't, we all got so upset. So this poor bus driver is trying to be a good sport, but all these 4-year-olds are beside themselves. I remember one parent trying to smooth it over, saying we couldn't go to Disneyland because we forgot our stuff back at preschool. I don't know why we thought that. Maybe a kid said it and it spread like wildfire. But I want to say maybe a parent volunteer said it as a joke and didn't realize kids were listening. If that's the case, after seeing a whole class of 4-year-olds crying, I'm sure they regretted it. Story 20. Someone brought a treasure troll to daycare. The kind with the wild hair and little gems on their tummies. 80s. They told the rest of us that if we held the troll, rubbed the gem, and made a wish that the wish would come true. I wished for me and my whole family to turn into dolphins. But as time went on, I started thinking about all the negative consequences of that, and worked myself into a state of complete anxiety for several weeks after. My daycare provider finally had to break it to me that wishes don't really come true. Story 21. So many things. For one, that the toilet was alive and needed to eat. It was fine when I was at home, but when I was 5 and went to pre-K, I would hold everything for hours, so I could come home and feed our toilet because the other assholes I lived with seemed super nonchalant about regular feeding times. No one bothered to look into my preoccupation with who had gone when and done what in a day. Another notable was that we have 2 pipes in our throats, one for breathing and one for eating. As was the standard explanation back in the day, I must have extrapolated that one must be on one side of my body, and the other was on the other side. Like most bilateral, observable stuff on us. I had so much anxiety about swallowing on the correct side, tilting my head, everything, and risking death if I forgot or was careless. Again, no one asked about the tilting. Story 22. This is a little stretch on the topic, but here goes. Arguing with my friend about which letter does our dad's name start. We were in kindergarten, so 4, 5 yo. This is translated, so I changed names and letters. So me and my friend had dads with the same name. Let's say it's Jack. So I obviously would call my dad as Dad. So we argued about what letter Jack starts, and my friend says it's the letter J, but I insist that it is the letter D. D for dad, so I just don't believe him, and I refuse to back off this argument. We eventually have to resolve it somehow, so we go ask an adult, what letter does the name Jack start? Of course, I realize my confusion that I call my dad named Jack with the word that starts with the letter D. Damn. Story 23. For a long time, I believed that Richie Valens died while singing La Bamba. Apparently, I always knew he died in a plane crash, but there's a bit more to the story. I believed, for some reason, that he didn't just sing La Bamba on the plane and was standing up, but he died while singing it and recording it on the very plane. Yes, at the end of the recording, the plane crashed. Pretty dark, but that's what I honestly believed. Of course, I know now he recorded it, and later sadly died on a tour, along with everyone else, aka the day the music died. Story 24:1. Instead of going for a blood test, I can simply keep a pet mosquito and use it for painless blood test. They can drain the blood out of its stomach. 2. If I make a backpack where a plant lives and I connect it with my mouth with a tube and mask, I can get unlimited fresh oxygen supply, and that plant can get unlimited carbon dioxide from me, and we can be like buddies. 3. Airplane poop lands directly on the ground. 4. Rain is basically God peeing. Sorry, God. 5. If I keep my leg outside the safe zone of bed, bed monster will eat it. 6. If I sleep facing the wall, again bed monster attack. Story 25. Jews don't believe in chewing gum. As a young child, my best friend told me her dad wouldn't allow her to chew gum. She used to hide it and chew it secretly. She also used to point out frequently that her dad was Jewish. In my young mind, I linked the two things together and concluded Judaism is against chewing gum. As a young adult, of course, I realized this wasn't true. My husband, who is Jewish, had a good laugh when I mentioned all of this to him. Story 26. I thought people couldn't hear other sounds when they were on the phone, so whenever my mom would get a phone call in the car, I'd start singing. That was the only time I'd ever sing around people because I've always been self-conscious about it, even though I'm actually pretty decent. Now that I think about it, I don't think she ever tried to quiet me down. She must have loved hearing me be happy. I'm gonna walk to her house and give her a hug. I love that bitch. Story 27. As a kid, I was certain the 50s were in black and white from all the pictures I'd seen. I used to joke, I had eyes in the back of my head to my kid. She stomped around like a T-Rex, was easy to figure out where she was. Ha ha! Anyways, she comes home from school one day, mad at me for lying. She got in a fight with a boy about moms having extra eyes. The teacher had to break up the fight. Whoopies. Story 28. That my parents accidentally used up all of the sleep available when they had my sister and therefore had none left for me. I developed this theory at 3 a.m. when I was 4. She could fall asleep anywhere, anytime, in any circumstances. I have struggled with insomnia my whole life. I still have suspicions that this is true when I'm a couple of days deep into very little sleep. Story 29. That the listed age recommendations were a hard and fast rule. I don't remember anyone telling me. I just assumed that if something said ages 8 and up, that you had to be at least 8 to play with it. As a kid who was otherwise reasonably intelligent, this led to a lot of sorrow seeing things in toy catalogs that looked like fun, but I convinced myself I couldn't have because I wasn't old enough. Once I got old enough to learn that the age guidelines were just suggestions and based mostly on certification standards for product safety, it was kind of a letdown. Story 30. Not me, but my son. We were at the zoo as a family and we made a bathroom stop. I came out and my husband and son were already finished and waiting for me. My son was absolutely dissolved in tears. I asked what happened and my husband could not even get the words out because he was laughing so hard. Finally, my son wailed, "Daddy said you don't pee out your butt, but you do!" We had a brief anatomy lesson after that, LOL. He knew boys, or those born considered boys, had penises, but we forgot to mention that not having a penis doesn't mean you have nothing in that place. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it, be sure to write comments and share your stories.